Hello and welcome back to part two of Recruit's webinar series, Hiring Top Talent for Teams. I am Kimberly Buck Goff, and I am one of the co-founders of Recruit, and I will be taking you through this time together. So let's go ahead and just get into review of what it is that we discussed last time. On part one, we talked about what's your checklist before you hire, really identifying your employee value proposition as well as defining your process. Today, we're really going to dig into the interview guides. How do you make that data-driven decision, as well as, just keeping that employee engagement throughout the way. So as we're looking at this, what's an interview? Well, it's a conversation with a purpose. What should you be able to determine? Well, if you hire this person today, how will he or she act and behave in the future? So all of those things really do tie into it. Again, interviewing is you do the best that you can. You really do try to ask the right questions, give the right assessments, and put your best foot forward, but understand that we're working with humans and there's always going to be that human element. So sometimes wrong decisions are made or people are hired for the wrong role. They have different roles. So just be okay and give yourself some grace to understand that you're going to do the best that you can to make the best hiring decision. But there's always some sort of risk when you are getting into hiring. All right. So when we think about interviewing, I first wanted to get into what goes on in an interview. And as much and basic as this can seem for some people, I really think it's important to go back and go through this, because if you're not doing this every day, there are some things that you can certainly miss, some things that you may or may not be doing. So let's go ahead and get into that. All right. So what do interviewers really do wrong? Well, unfortunately, they do some too much talking, prejudgment. You really don't know what to look for, lack of preparation, asking leading questions, lack of an objective, poor selective listening, and you jump to conclusion within the first 4 minutes. So these are all things I know I have personally done. Every time that we hold a live workshop, all the hands are raised. So it's okay if you have done that, but now you're educating yourself on some things to do, just to be aware of some things that, interviewers do wrong, and what can you do to make up for that. So if you're thinking about this, and if you can identify here, hey, I know I'm going into these interviews, I have my yellow pad, and I'm just asking these questions. Well, that is part of that lack of preparation. There are more likely than not, conversations have been had before your conversation here today. So make sure you read the notes, make sure you look at the resume, see if there's any commonality that you have with this candidate, and, put their nerves at ease, try to have a little bit of that small talk. That's all part of that preparation too, along with really understanding the job description and what exactly it is that you're looking for as well. So why do we feel like selection decisions fail? Well, sometimes they do. There's two really big reasons, and so many things can be a subtopic underneath this. However, we have something that's called the glare factor, and then we have something that's called shortcutting the process. So essentially what the glare factor is it's defined as one outstanding characteristic that overshines the rest. So essentially what happens is we lose our objectivity. So let me give you an example. You are interviewing someone that has all of the licenses that you're looking for, CFP, life accident health, has some experience on that side, but they are lacking in communication. They have job hopped a little bit, but they have the licenses that you need, and you know that this person could come in and do the job really quickly. Well, those licenses may outshine the rest of the resume. So that's something just truly to be aware of, and say, hey, just because this person has these licenses, yes, this person may be very smart, but are they going to be the best fit for us in thinking about our employee value proposition, our culture, what we need here. Are they going to be the best fit? Right. So I'm sure everybody here has heard the term slow to hire, quick to fire. You really want to make sure that you're going through the steps in order to make the best hiring decision. And that kind of leads us to the next thing of why selection decisions fail, and that's due to shortcutting the process. So whether, it's established by a specific advisor within your firm or home office, or your managing partner, general agent, or you're an independent, ultimately, you really do want to have a systematic process. And this really is able to provide an effective comparison to profiles of candidates in the process. And I really do think that if you're able to follow this process and do this data-driven analysis that we'll talk a little bit more about today, you're going to help yourself, not have the blinders on, not being able to get that glare factor, things like that. And because there's going to be multiple ways in order to assess this candidate. Now, when we're also thinking about shortcutting the process, that could be something like, oh, I was referred to this person. They're a great person. They don't need to interview that many people. Just go ahead and do one and we'll move forward. No, truly follow the process, because you just really never know. And perhaps you have another candidate out there that might be a better fit. So you don't want to shortcut yourself too on that side. So we had talked a little bit about this too last time, but really getting into your hiring process, right? So this is going to be the selection process that we recommend here at Recruit. And again, this is going to be for teams that are looking to hire operational or leadership candidates, things like that. This is not really for the financial advisor specific role, meaning like a new advisor or things like that. So again, let's just go over this. So you want to create a 3 to 5 question pre-screen based on qualifications of the role. Look at the job description. What are the basic requirements needed in order to do the job? This can be done if you do choose to go on an Indeed, use something like Talent Nest. You can actually put in pre-screen questions and ask people to answer these, require them to answer these when they apply. So then that way you don't have to spend the time with everybody, and you're only spending time with the people that are really qualified for the position. Then once they pass this pre-screen, we recommend to do an actual conversation with them, but if you're looking at time, I would still recommend at least a 5-minute conversation to make sure that this person can hold a conversation, they speak well, things like that. And then that obviously you can go ahead and schedule the first interview. The first interview, certainly you want to do an overview of your company, the employee value proposition, and understanding the candidate's career goals. And again, are they going to be a good culture fit? Giving them a personality assessment is after the first interview. Recommend to do that. If you have the ability to have your entire team take a personality assessment, there are opportunities for you to merge all the answers together to see who fits well with who. I know companies like Culture Index can do that. Harrison Assessment can do that. And then that way it just can help give you, again, part of that data-driven analysis to say, based upon the answers of this person's personality test, they do fit well in our team. Now, obviously, you're going to want the intuition side of that as well, which really comes with the interviews. But again, we'll get into that. The second interview, ideally with a teammate, somebody that does their role currently on another team, or someone that they would be working with, as well as a behavioral-based interview. So that's going to be ideally with the leader or the manager of this person. Then we want you to give them a skills assessment. The skills assessment will completely vary from whatever role it is that you're looking to hire. For example, if you're looking for more of an executive assistant or even just a coordinator, really making sure that they can do the basic skills of Microsoft Office. How are they at their grammar and their typing skills, some things along those lines. And then you can also, if you're bringing on, say, for instance, an investment specialist or something like that, you can give 2 different case study notes and see what would they What would they do in terms of researching for this person's plan? What would they put together? Cite all their sources. Where do they find that? And that way you can see and understand how it is that they're thinking. Then the third interview ideally would be that offer interview. You want to go ahead and have a dinner, ideally with somebody important to them, spouse, significant other, partner, or potentially a parent if that's something that's important to them, and then onboarding them. So that's essentially your hiring process. The recruiting process does not stop until they are on board walking through that door. So really making sure that it's not just because you hear a yes, you can move on. You definitely want to keep that going, continuing to keep them engaged to ensure that they will start. All right, so let's go ahead now and get into the guide to interviewing. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up. Okay. So we're going to have this Google document for everybody who did attend the webinar and signed up for the webinar. So you will have access to this. However, what I want to do today is really go through all these first interviews. So when we're looking at this, the first thing I wanted to do was really going over the do's and the don'ts of interviewing. So let me first preface by saying we are not attorneys here at Recruit. We are not specifically part of SHRM. However, we can certainly do our own research and understand the questions that can and cannot be asked. And this is just a reference point, but please do check with your attorney, check with your local, and local and state law, just to make sure that you are certainly abiding by what you need to. However, here are some categories and examples of questions that you really do not want to ask about: age, race, color, national origin, gender and sex, religion, disability, marital and family status, sexual orientation and gender identity, financial status, arrest record, military service, genetic information, and salary history. Now, I've heard multiple times with people hiring on the financial advisor side, because you're hiring for a contractor, you can ask some of these questions. I would err on the side of caution. Even if you're hiring, let's say, for instance, a lead advisor, just err on the side of caution and make sure that you are aware of these questions that you should and shouldn't ask. One question I did want to go over here. Certainly we all do a background check in this industry. I do think that's important to share with them. And oftentimes people have asked, hey, is there anything in your background that we should know about? I would just explain to them that there will be a background check completed. And if they'd like to share anything with you now, that would be important just to help get ahead of the process. However, the salary history does come up quite a bit, especially in interviewing for roles like this. One thing I just want to preface is, in 20 states, it is illegal to ask what somebody was making at their previous job. So I don't know what state that you're in, so I would certainly check that. But ultimately, what you should and could be asking is, help me understand, what are you looking to make in terms of compensation? And sometimes people will share, well, I was making this, I'm looking to do this. It just really depends on what the candidate's comfortable with, but it is illegal in a lot of states to ask, what were you last making? So I just wanted everybody to be aware. It just kind of has, the guidelines, where do we source this from, and everything on that side. So please go ahead and just use this. So anybody that is involved in the interview process really should know and understand the do's and don'ts of interviewing. All right. So moving on from there, the pre-screen questionnaire, that was something that it really is just taking it from the job description and understanding the basic requirements that you are looking for. And perhaps culture is a big part of that or not. You really want to have it, again, anywhere from 3 to 5 questions. And that's just going to help eliminate that candidate pool to really be meeting with the candidates that are a good fit for you. So now let's go ahead and get into a first interview questionnaire. Okay. This is a good example. I'm not saying you have to follow this every single time, but I want to go ahead and provide an example for you to understand, hey, what was this particular firm really looking for? culture was extremely important to them, along with consistently bettering yourself. You'll see that in some of these questions. However, when you first sit down and meet with somebody, whether it is via Zoom or, Ring Central, Teams, what have you, via video, and you still always want to state your agenda. So, hey, Mr. or Miss Candidate, I'm so excited to speak with you today. Really appreciate you going through our pre-qualification process. And I think that you have the potential to be a really great fit. So ultimately, what I want to do with you today is just get to know you a little bit more, understand your background, go into some more details on that. And I'm going to share a good high level about the opportunity and specifically why people really have enjoyed working with our firm and kind of taking you through our employee value proposition. So that's my agenda. So tell me about yourself. This is a very open-ended question, and people may start going through their resume, or they may just start talking about personal things. It just is up to them what they really want to get into. And then kind of what about the opportunity with us has you most excited? What is the most important thing to you when thinking about making a career move? Both of these questions right here are going to help you understand how to somewhat close this candidate. So taking diligent notes on this are going to be extremely important, because ultimately when you get back potentially to offer stage, maybe there's negotiation, maybe there isn't, but you want to remind them of initially what got them excited about this role and also why they were looking, which is a question we certainly ask in the pre-screen process. So you want to go through these first 5 questions, and then you want to get them talking a lot, get them comfortable. Ultimately, this interview is about them. It's not really about you at this point, but you do want to give more details of your EVP, as well as the role within the firm, the importance of it, and getting them excited for that next step. Then asking them questions 6 through 12. This last question here, on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you about the opportunity? That's going to give you a really good idea. Are they going to continue moving forward or not? And the question, maybe if they're like, oh, I'm about a 5 or a 7 out of 10 on this opportunity, I would ask them, okay, so great. What would you need to understand in order to get you closer to a 9 or a 10? That's going to be some extra questions that they maybe have lingering in the back of their mind. And then we recommend for you to tell them about the selection process as well as the next steps, because everything with this, people are consistently questioning themselves. When am I going to hear back from them? So you just want to give them an understanding of, hey, here's what our selection process is. We currently have about 5 people in the process. So give us a couple of weeks to get through that, and then we'll be calling people back for second rounds. If you really like them, just as a pointer, highly recommend bring them back within 3 to 5 business days. Time kills all deals. We've heard that multiple times before. Same thing with recruiting. You will lose very good candidates if there's too much time. So really make sure to adjust that if you really love them. All right, so that's essentially the first meeting. And then what we want you to do and recommend for you to do is to fill out this first interview impression sheet. This should be taken on every single candidate, kept in your notes, whether it be in your CRM or your applicant tracking system, or in some sort of way that you can always refer back to this. You do have a responsibility as you are hiring, and we would never wish this upon anybody. If there are ever any discrimination cases, things like that put against you, you want to have all the documentation filled out to make sure that you can prove your case that you were not. So then what we'd want to get into is ultimately you would have them take that that personality assessment. And then from there, if they pass that, which hopefully they would, you would then want to take them to the behavioral based interview. One thing we always recommend is to go over the results of the personality assessment. That is going to be extremely important. And that's also a common thing that a lot of employers miss out on. Candidates are asked to take so many assessments and they never know how they did. So take that time, whether it be 5-10 minutes, to really go over these results. And oftentimes too, that can be a selling point based upon their results and how they are as a person, that they could be a really great fit for your team too. So just keeping that in mind. But ultimately, the behavioral-based interview, getting into this, it's really designed to assess the candidate's past behavioral in specific situations so you can help predict how are they going to act in the future. This is very open-ended questions, asking specific examples. And you never really want to take just the face value of an answer. You can be like, can you give me some more detail on that? How did that affect you? Tell me a little bit more about your process. Asking those dig-in questions are going to be really important. Be in the moment here. Do not think about what's the next question that you're asking. You want to get everything that you can out of these questions and really be the best chance to get to know these candidates. Okay. So, what we first recommend to do is to determine your needs. So every single firm is different. Every single team is different. What are your needs, in terms of, who would be the best fit? For example, if your firm is on a hybrid schedule or fully remote, perhaps you want to make sure that this person has had a fully remote role before, because if it's the first time, that can be challenging for people. Perhaps they need more interaction, what exactly it is that you do, or do you want them to be here 5 times a week or 5 days a week? So again, that's a very simple explanation of that, but you really do want to understand your exact criteria for the best fit for your position. So then we did give some behavioral question examples that you can go ahead and ask. And I recommend to pick about 3 to 5. This can get to be a very long interview if you do about 10 interviews, or 10 interview questions. So 3 to 5 based upon your needs. And then in addition to this behavioral-based interview, again, this is where you want them to meet with a team member or somebody that's doing the exact role with them in another team, something like that, just to give them someone outside of management or outside of leadership. Oftentimes we have found that this is one of the most impactful parts of the interview, just talking with other team members and getting to know them as well. All right, and you guessed it, we're going to want you to do a candidate evaluation. So this candidate evaluation is a little bit more detailed at this point, not just picking a number. Here's where you want to understand, their strengths, developmental needs, and then ultimately, do you pre-contract, meaning are you going to move them forward? And so this again is going to be all based upon that data-driven interviewing mindset. And so you want to fill this out on every single candidate. You want to really take a look at how many developmental needs do they have, their strengths, things along those lines, so you can help make the best decision for your team. All right. So let's see here. All right. So we're in there in that portion. The skills assessment, after you do the candidate review, I briefly talked about that before, but that is going to be based upon their capabilities to do the job. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about the skills assessment. And you essentially want to grade it, right? Give them, take a look at that and see what you're expecting out of the answers. And sometimes it's not necessarily, pass or fail, but it could be, oh, I would wish we could have done this with this type of advice, or I wish they would have referred to, this source instead of this source, or did they really understand the risk analysis, things like that. So you really want to take a look at that and have multiple people on your team grade this, at least 2, so that way you have a separate opinion. And if you don't have a big team right now, ask a leader, ask another advisor, just to really understand what's going to be the best for you. Then ultimately you're getting to that offer stage. Offer stage, I do recommend having a packet, ideally with their name on it, your benefits, your benefit options, compensation, bonus structure, and really laying that out along with what are your expectations of them in the first year, right? What do they need to achieve? What do you want them to do? And are there any ways for them to receive extra bonuses, to receive potentially an increase in compensation in their first year? Lay that out for them. People really want to know what, how they can plan for their financial future too. All right. So let's talk a little bit about this data-driven decisions. First and foremost, personality assessments. You will get, based upon almost every single personality assessment that I've seen, they will give you, they will identify them as a certain type of person, or they will say this one was reliable, this one wasn't reliable, they are a certain percentage fit, whatever that may be. So we recommend to have all the personality assessments again completed, looking at them with, the score of pass or fail or things like that. That would account for roughly 20% of your hiring decision. The interviews and intuition, okay, would also account for about 40% of your hiring decision. That's how are they conducting themselves in the interview? Were they answering this stuff correctly? Are they answering the things on the qualification side that I need them to be able to do? Do I get along with them? Are they going to be a good culture fit? Things like that. And then the final 20% would be on the skills assessment. That skills assessment, again, you're going to be able to decide, is it a pass fail? Is it a certain grade scale? What have you? And then ultimately what you want to do is you want to compare the candidates that you have in the final round process, probably 2 to 3 people. You don't need a lot of people because you've weeded quite a few people out. And how are they comparing to each other to really help you make that data-driven decision to make the right hire for yourself. And if they're not hitting a certain percentage, then maybe you need to go back to the drawing board. Again, slow to hire, quick to fire. All right. So our final portion that we really wanted to talk about was the employee engagement. Okay. So a few things and just a few tips when you are bringing someone on board that are going to be important for you to do. So first and foremost, have a pre-employment checklist and sharing them. You don't have to do everything with them in terms of sharing every single part of your checklist, but let your candidate that has accepted know what to expect. So we're going to have a 2-week or a 4-week or a 6-week, whatever, period of what we call onboarding. We need you to get your background check. We need you to get, potentially a certain type of, license if that's needed. We need you to read a book. We need you to get familiar with this. So if there's any sort of pre-requirements that you want them to do prior to their first day, lay that out and be organized about that. Don't ask them to do it with a week's notice. You really do want to make sure that you're giving them enough time to prepare. You also want to prepare a training calendar. And I'm not just saying like a checklist training calendar. We recommend to do the first 2 weeks, literally hour by hour. What are they going to be doing? Who are they going to be shadowing? Who are they going to go out? Do they have a lunch planned? When do they need to come into the office? What's their start time? What's their end time? All of those things are going to be really important. So recommend you putting out their first week prior, and scheduling that out to them before their first day, roughly 3 days or so. We would recommend giving them an email saying, we look forward to seeing you on your first day. Here's the exact training calendar that here's what your calendar is going to look like in your first week. You'll notice that we have lunch scheduled for you on your first day. I'm going to be taking you out, to see if they have any food restrictions or anything like that on that side. And then also, you would want to let them know, again, work attire. If this is all virtual, what are you going to do for them? If you do something virtual, I recommend sending them lunch too. Just a little bit of extra really helps on that side. But ultimately, it's about communicating. Remember, they don't know what's in your head. You need to articulate what they're going to be experiencing. That's all part of that welcome email. The first day handshake, if it is in person, make sure to greet them at the door. Sometimes there's issues with getting into the building, things like that. So just make sure that somebody is there and ready to, greet them with a handshake. The next thing that we recommend to do is doing a 30, 60, 90-day essentially review or check-in. The 30-day review / check-in is all about their experience in their training, and were their expectations met based upon what you discussed in the interview process. If that is of interest, if somebody does want those questions, please reach out. We can certainly give those to you. We do have a specific questionnaire for that. But ultimately, again, it's really just about what was your experience? How are you doing? Doing a nice check-in that day. When you get into the 60 and 90-day reviews, that's more about, hey, how is their performance? What are some things that they need to work on? What are some things that they're doing really well at? And just giving them, some ideas on that side. And then obviously beyond the 90 days, if you do every 6-month review or yearly reviews, really getting that stuff scheduled. And a nice tip is when they start, schedule the 30, 60, 90-day reviews, because that stuff comes really quick and you don't want to miss it. That's pretty much essentially the employee survey, which is part of the 30 days. And then one just final tip on this side is it really is about the unexpected things as well as personalization. You don't necessarily have to spend a lot of money to show that you care about your team. Whether it's a handwritten note just to say after their first week saying, you're just doing such an amazing job. I'm really excited that you're here. Really look forward to, you sharing your career with us and helping the firm grow. Again, it's little things like that. When people start to expect things, they become unappreciated. I used to follow, I think it was like Chief of Happiness, some sort of blog. And one thing that he did one day, just very randomly, he got like breakfast sandwiches. And as everybody came through the door that day, he greeted them personally. He was the owner of the company. And, he just said, hey, we're excited to be here. Here's some extra energy for the day or something like that. So little things along those lines. You can do little contests for day off. You can, I've seen other companies, just this is probably something a little more planned, but they've done like a spring cleaning week off, which, eventually I think we'd like to do at Recruit eventually. My Recruit team, not sure yet, not there yet, but we'd love to, where, you give everybody off a week off during the springtime to do whatever it is that they need to do on their household, or maybe they're going to take a vacation or what have you. And this is just something that, sometimes being part of smaller companies, that's a really great benefit where it doesn't, again, cost a lot of money, but that's something you can provide extra happiness for your team too. So those are just a few ideas. But consistently keeping up with communication is going to be extremely important. Showing people how appreciative you are that they are there and the job that they're doing is a good job. And or if they do need to improve, you need to be able to have that ability to share that feedback with them based upon a respectful relationship too. So that's a lot about the employee engagement as well. So we've kind of gone over quite a bit here today, going through the interview guides, really looking at the data-driven decisions and helping you make that hiring decision. And then also looking at, hey, how do I really keep them engaged? So all these guides will be provided for you. Certainly hope that this was helpful. I, again, just want to thank our super team for always, certainly being there with our clients, being really caring about the company and just working so hard in order to, really impact this industry. And that's just such a mission and vision and a value of our firm. So thank you so much for your time. And if you need anything, please do not hesitate to reach out. I am Kimberly at recruitpartner.com. If you don't follow me on LinkedIn, please go ahead and send a friend request. And, until next time, thank you.